Welcome into the KSL Sports Front Page. It's presented by University Federal Credit Union. And on this holiday Monday, Trevor Allen, host of the Crimson Corner podcast, Utes Insider, joined by Cougar Tracks and Cougar Sports Saturday host, BYU Insider, Mitch Harper. Mitch, how are you, man?
Happy Memorial Day to you, Trevor. Doing well. Hope your holiday is going good as well.
Yeah, it's been good. Just post some content pieces up today, and then took a little bit of a break, and happy to be jumping on and talking sports with you. Now, the first thing we'll talk about, as you guys could probably tell, we have you covered when it comes to Jerry Sloan, who passed away on Friday morning at the age of 78. Something just a more lighter mood as we're going through Jerry's career. One of the things that was brought up on Sports Beat, Mitch, was the best, I guess, Jerry Sloan fights, if you will. We all know that Jerry was full of them. He was a guy who always stood up for his players. Was there a certain one that came to mind when you thought of Jerry Sloan and having any kind of altercation?
I really like the one with Dennis Rodman where he blew the kiss in Detroit. That one to me was pretty good. And Jerry Sloan was always a guy that he was fiery, man. He was competitive, and I love that about the guy. I mean, he's just old school in every sense, and you don't see coaches like that anymore. And I really like that soundbite that we posted the day he passed away on Friday, talking about, no one that works an 8-to-5 job wants to hear basketball players being tired. That was something I always liked about Jerry Sloan. But yeah, I mean, as far as the fights, I really like that Dennis Rodman one, how he blew a kiss to Rodman, because Rodman, as we saw in The Last Dance, what a character he was. And for Sloan and him, I mean, it's really two opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of personality, but they're both aggressive. They were both competitors, and that showed itself in that game in Detroit.
Yeah, the one that stood out to me, I actually watched the game against the Kings back in 2003, where Sloan pushed Courtney Kirkland, ended up serving a 7-game. He was out for 7 games and was obviously automatically kicked out of the ball game. But also 10 years before that, and I find it funny to where Bob Delaney was right up in Jerry's personal bubble. Jerry pushed him full on, and that was 10 years before that. So back in '93, and Sloan was kicked out of the game, fined $2,000, and only had to serve a 1-game suspension.
Wow,
it just goes to show how different the NBA is from decade to decade.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, we talk about load management. Now we talk about, these crazy playoff scenarios because of this pandemic. It's definitely a different era today than it was when Jerry Sloan was in his heyday. That's for sure.
What were your immediate thoughts when Jerry Sloan passed away on Friday morning?
I know that the last 4 years or so, he's been having a tough battle. And as Mark Eaton put it on his Twitter, what was it? The good fight is over, Coach Sloan. He fought a valiant fight, and he's probably in a much better place now, and it's a difficult thing to have to go through. So, but still, I mean, 78 still feels like there was years left to be had, and some of these diseases can be just so crippling for individuals. But man, what a life that he lived, the impact he made, and the power that a sport can have on someone's life. I mean, I thought the piece that Jeremiah Jensen did for KSL 5 TV was fantastic, highlighting Coach Sloan's life and just what the upbringings, the modest upbringings he came from, and he became an NBA icon. And it's crazy to think. I know that I should have known this, living in Salt Lake my whole life, but I for some reason I thought that he won a Coach of the Year once. I always forgot, that was a hot sports radio topic for so many years. When I look back in retrospect, why does Jerry Sloan not win a Coach of the Year title? I always hated how Coach of the Year was always, it goes to the guy that exceeded, every media member's expectations. Maybe you should have gave a Coach of the Year to a guy like Jerry Sloan for, 15 consecutive years of consecutive playoff appearances. I mean, you just don't see that very often. And I think that kind of just because you predicted someone to win 20 games, there was one year the Jazz were predicted to win 9 games and they won 41. What was it? The Ben Hangleton team. And it was just,
it was Raul Lopez was the starting point guard.
So Sloan was just a heck of a coach. And It kind of gave me a chance to just look back on his tenure because, I mean, growing up, I had many memories. I went to many Jazz games as a kid. Any Jazz Laker game, I was pretty much at them all. And so I have fond memories. I just always respected Jerry Sloan in the class that he was. And I was like the John Deere hat. I think he bought some of his John Deere's off Redwood Road, that old John Deere stop there. And yeah, just a class act guy, and tip of the cap to a life well lived.
Thing is that when he passed away Friday morning, you were seeing on Twitter a bunch of media members locally here that were talking about their interactions with him and things like that. I wasn't fortunate enough to interview Jerry Sloan or be in any of those scrums, because when I got into the business was 2010, and it was towards the end of that year, and I wasn't really ready. I was just I was an intern. I was getting kind of getting my feet wet, and so I never really went to Jazz availability until after he was gone and Tyrone Corbin was the head coach. But just to see all the stories of, I knew growing up as a diehard Jazz fan how tough he was as a coach, and how, he wanted his teams to play hard and physical and tough. But I didn't really know the teddy bear side of it off the court and the way he was interacting with his players off the court. And I just thought that was absolutely amazing, just how, a guy from just a small town in Illinois, can make it all the way this far. And, today I kind of got caught, watching a bunch of videos on the internet about Jerry Sloan and, this battle that he had, and, just things like that. It just really made me, really appreciate of what he did, not only for this franchise, but also for the entire league.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I think that he lived a great life. He's the definition of Jazz basketball. I think that was one of the themes that I took away from his passing, is that you cannot think of the Utah Jazz without thinking of Karl Malone, John Stockton, and their head coach, Jerry Sloan, and the respect that John Stockton and Karl Malone had for Jerry Sloan all those years. You knew what was coming from the opposition. And I mean, every team knew what the Jazz were going to do, but there was still that respect that those players had for Jerry Sloan. Even in the times when Karl Malone was going through some contract beefs with Larry H. Miller, there was always that respect for Jerry Sloan. They always showed up and played. And I think we can all kind of respect that about that era of Utah Jazz basketball, when you're talking about getting up, as Paul Millsap said, bring your lunch pail, go to work, and get it done and get it better every single day and be consistent. Because that's, I don't think we see that enough in different avenues of work these days. So very commendable. And I think you put it well said. I think it was well said.
A little bit of a teaser that is going to pop up on this site tomorrow. There was a stat that really stood out to me from Jerry Sloan, is that there were 245 coaching changes in the NBA during Sloan's tenure. There might be a article posted on KSLSports.com tomorrow around that stat. So just be on the lookout for that. All right, Mitch, I'm going to let you kind of take over here. It looks like some big news happening for BYU football and also for all the other programs around the Cougars coming up on June 1st.
Yeah, June 1st, BYU going to have facilities open to football, and then also men's and women's basketball programs. Facilities are going to start to open up. It's kind of as they're putting it, a multi-phase opening, but what it highlights is that BYU can kind of chart their own path. And I've always thought that, independence, there was this thought of, if everyone goes to conference-only games, what will BYU do? That was a little bit concerning for sure, the thought of playing just Liberty and New Mexico State and, Army. I mean, that would have been a brutal schedule. No one would want to see that. But the positives with independence show that BYU is not at the mercy of another league or a league commissioner office. Other states, they can kind of chart their own path. And that's what BYU is doing. I think, Tom Holmoe made it clear a couple weeks ago in a social media video he did for fans and for anyone that was viewing that, when the NCAA is ready to go, BYU is going to be ready to go as well. And when the NCAA said June 1st, voluntary workouts can happen, BYU proved that and said, we're going to start opening up facilities. So I think it shows that, BYU, if the rest of the country is going to play college football on time, BYU is going to do that. Now, BYU is probably not going to be the leader at the forefront. They're not going to be that team that's vocally, or that program that's vocally saying, we're not worried about the coronavirus or anything like that. Like there's some states like Iowa, Wyoming, they're just like, hey, they're loud and proud. Like we are going to be business as usual. BYU kind of sizes up the landscape and then acts appropriately. And that's the right decision. I think it'll be interesting to see how they handle, maybe testing and make sure everyone's healthy. They're going to do, check student athletes' temperatures and things like that. So they'll take all the precautions necessary. BYU financially is in a good spot. They didn't have to take the bailouts from local government to keep them afloat. They're in a good spot financially, and BYU is going to be able to navigate this and come out of it, I think, in a pretty good spot as well.
So what's that first phase going to look like, do you think? I don't think that they've really announced exactly what it is. Is it just going to be small groups right now and it's all voluntary?
Yeah, and they only noted football, men's and women's basketball in their first announcement when they announced this on Friday. So I would imagine maybe just those sports and gradually continue with the more facilities. And I think they'll adhere to the state policies as well. Yellow, low-risk phase, 50 people, things like that. BYU is going to be very conscious of that and make sure everyone's safe like anyone else. I mean, that's just – we got to figure out a way to navigate this all together. This is all – it's cliche at this point to say unprecedented new normal, but that's what it is. And we're all trying to figure it out ourselves. And I think BYU will act appropriately. They're not going to have media day in person down at BYU. It's likely going to be a virtual one. We're still going to find out maybe when the dates are going to be most likely, probably in July. It was originally going to be June 18th, but BYU will, like I said, I think BYU has been very open and responsive, and they're going to be kind of following the trends of what everyone else in college football is doing. And I think the theme around college sports right now is that it's back to business coming up in June 1st.
And, to kind of spin that over to the University of Utah, the one thing that BYU doesn't have to worry about is going through the layers of getting back to, I guess, normalcy, if you will, because, for Utah, they have to not only get clearance nationally, they have to get clearance by their conference before they can even think about opening up their, weight rooms and, trying to get student athletes back on campus. And, one of the things that I know that Utah's AD Mark Harlan said is that he's hopeful for June 1st for them to be able to open up, parts of campus where they can have small groups do voluntary workouts with student athletes. And I mean, it sounds like at first they're going to do the local players who are already living here in Utah, and then they'll start branching out and bringing in more from out of state, bringing them back to Salt Lake City as they can. But one of the things that kind of makes me feel a little bit better about the college football season, Mitch, is Pac-12 Commissioner Larry Scott was on CNN, and he believes that the college football season, at least as far as Pac-12 schools, are going to start on time and have camp in July and August and having the season start at the end of August, and that's kind of looking that way. Do you feel that way from everything that you've seen throughout at least all the news surrounding college football?
Yeah, I think so. I think we need to start on time. I think we can make the argument, should college football start earlier than the start date? That might be the conversation that needs to be had, because you're seeing a lot of universities like Notre Dame moving up their academic calendar for the fall semester from late August to August 10th to get out of class before maybe the winter and when the colder season approaches, when a potential uptick in cases could go up. So maybe that's the conversation we have next. Like, do we get to a point where college football is starting mid-August rather than September 3rd or August 29th, whatever it may end up being? So I think college football's got to start on time. And I think that, the more data that we've been able to see throughout this coronavirus pandemic, the narrative has quickly changed from season's not going to happen to now it's going to happen and we're going to see a full season. Now, I think the conversation goes to, is it maybe earlier? And two, the fan element, how many fans do you have? If you do have it limited, how do you choose which fans you're going to have in the stands? So I hope we see a situation come September 3rd when it's BYU and Utah kicking off to open up the 2020 season, that it's a Rock and Rice Eccles Stadium. It's a rivalry game, and it's what we've always known. And I think that fans, a lot of them would be willing to wear a mask. I think they would. I think that, I think fans just want that opportunity to go see those games in person. So, but I think we're definitely going to see college football, I feel, starting on time in 2020.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just of what you said, whether it's going to be conference games or, if they're going to be able to play the full schedule. Because I think if you look at Utah's schedule, it's not that bad if you go to conference only. The only one that I would feel bad about missing out on is the BYU game, because you're playing Wyoming and a lower division team. I mean, to me, that's not important. What is important in this state is having the rivalry game. And whether Utah's won 9 straight or not, it's still a big game in this state for both sides. And everyone wakes up for that game. And so I think it would be it would be a real shame to miss out on that game due to this pandemic. But we've missed out on a lot of things for the last 2 months or so. So but I do think that this is kind of getting on the right track of kind of seeing that vision of what's going to happen with the college football season. Because 2 or 3 weeks ago, Mitch, we didn't really know.
It's true, and I think that for BYU, if there was a situation where the Pac-12 did go conference only, maybe they hit up other leagues like the Big 12, like the SEC, maybe, who've been kind of vocal in expressing like, hey, we're gonna have that full 12-game schedule. Even Alabama's AD is saying, we're planning on have Bryant-Denny Stadium filled to capacity. So, maybe there could be some openings for BYU on the schedule, because the Cougars do have games against Pac-12 teams in Utah, Arizona State, and Stanford. So it'll be interesting. But I do think, though, we're trending in a positive direction. And, we've fought the curve. The curve has went down, and hospitals are in a good spot. And I think that's the biggest thing. And if we waited till a vaccine, we'd be waiting till January or February. And,
At least
we've seen the money that could be involved here in college football. We're talking about $4 billion in Power 5 football, and a lot of lives are a lot of jobs are attached to that. I think a lot of the student athletes, I mean, most of them, I would imagine, would want to play. I would assume, but we'll find out. And I think this is all unique. It's going to be fascinating to see how each and every one of these schools handles testing, because what does happen if someone does get a positive test? Does it shut down like the NBA did when Rudy Gobert was announced with the coronavirus? So those are measures that's got to be taken care of first if this thing is going to kick off. But it feels like there's a lot of smart people, way smarter than us, maybe in a higher pay grade, that are making those decisions necessary to hopefully make it happen, because we all want football. Because that's the one thing that I'm holding on to, Trevor, because this whole sportsless world we're living in, I just keep telling myself, okay, football is coming. Football is coming, and we'll get back to normalcy when we have football. You take away football, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. So we got to have some football.
You and me both. I mean, I'm tired of covering NBA 2K tournaments and horse tournaments and these match golf tournaments thing. While it is entertaining, I mean, I know right now, sitting in May, we wouldn't have college football anyway, but it scares the living crap out of us knowing that there's a possibility it might not happen or start later or even potentially go into spring. That's what really frightens me the most.
Yeah, I think college football is trending in a positive direction, and I think this whole situation, is going to be a positive. I think we're all going to, be better off in the long run. It'll be interesting to see how the new normal will look for this college football season for a spectator standpoint in the stands. But as long as it's on TV, college football has become a great TV product. And if you're going to shut down or shut off the fans, this is a good era to get shut out in, because we can all go home to our nice high definition TVs. You tell me this in 1991, I'm livid, because I'm on my standard def TV and I'm irate because I'm seeing a blurry television, but I didn't know any better back then. But nowadays, hey, I can't be in the stands. Hopefully we can be in the press box, but if worse comes to worse, we can go to our nice televisions and enjoy life with satellite and cable and whatnot. So it won't be the end of the world. We'll get back to those stadiums eventually, but let's keep our fingers crossed that it does happen.
As long as we don't have the mountain carrying the game.
Exactly. Yeah, you tell us that. Well, the thing is, we didn't even get the mountain back then anyway. The 2006 season, I'm like, I'm like scrambling, going to Iggy's. I'm calling up like all these local places. I'm like, hey, do you have the Mountain? Do you have Comcast? No, we got DirecTV. No. And I like hang up and I'm just like calling all these places trying to find the random BYU Tulsa game. I'm like, God, I need to find this game. First world problems back in 2006.
That was first world problems, that's for sure. And obviously with both BYU and Utah, they have much better TV deals than they did back then. Now on to the NFL, but still staying local. Green Bay Packers offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett. And I don't know if he's related to Tom Hackett.
I was going to say, I think he's got it. Like, I can see Tom saying, my dear cousin Nathaniel. Like, I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah, we're all going to call him Nate just because it's just better that way. Nate Hackett told some of the reporters that he's potentially that he's not sure how he's going to use Jordan Love in his first season. We all thought, okay, we're just going to stow him away for 3 years or so until Aaron Rodgers is done, and kind of like the whole Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers dynamic. But now they're thinking of potentially using Jordan Love the way that, I don't know, the New Orleans Saints used Taysom Hill. And, you know, that I think a lot of teams are starting to look at it that way. I think that Sean Payton and you know, Taysom are creating this whole new era for the way that for the way that the game is played.
It's kind of fascinating when you think about it, but I mean, I cannot see Jordan Love being a, you know, wide receiver, tight end, special teams guy. One, because he's a first round pick, and there's a lot of, you know, you're investing something like Jordan Love is the future quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. So it's like, you're not going to risk your future on, you know, doing the F position as the Saints call Taysom Hill's role down in New Orleans. In my opinion, I think that this is a lot of kind of like, you know, putting it out there like, hey, this could possibly be happening. But when push comes to shove and we see the Packers playing this season, I think ultimately they're going to have Jordan Love as that number 2 quarterback and trying to be a sponge and push Aaron Rodgers for playing time. I mean, I think we're going to see a situation, honestly, where maybe a year or two, most, we're seeing Jordan Love become the guy in Green Bay, and Rodgers probably wants to eventually get out. So I think that's where we're headed. And I think that, you know, they're just kind of still putting the pressure maybe on Rodgers to continue to perform and speak it into existence. Like, hey, Jordan Love could be out there, but realistically, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I don't either. And, you know, part of the quote in there is that he just said that, especially like right here, I'll highlight it for you guys who are tuning in. Just says that, you know, I think everything's still so early to tell. I mean, they haven't even gotten into a meeting room at Lambeau, and he hasn't talked to Jordan Love face to face and gotten much work with them. But he said, but there's still so much yet to be seen. You never know, anything can happen. That's the part right there where I think a lot of people are like, And yeah. I just and just like you, the only way I see it, I don't see him being used as a wide receiver or tight end or anything like that. I see him being used as, you know, a quarterback coming in who can run the football. But Aaron Rodgers can too. It's just he's starting to, you know, slow down a little bit. But Jordan Love didn't blow the doors off by running the football at you know, up in Logan for the last 3 years. I mean, he had 7 rushing touchdowns as a sophomore, but he didn't even reach 100 yards rushing. So a lot of that is just, I mean, he's not like Patrick Mahomes, who can, even though people are, you know, putting that comp to him. It's just, to me, I think he's going to be more used as kind of like a decoy for other ways, especially because the Packers didn't go out and get any weapons for Aaron Rodgers in that draft.
Yeah, and I think that honestly, too, I mean, you don't want to risk running him either, because then you're the higher probability of getting him injured. Because again, he's your future in Green Bay. Yeah. People can critique that pick, but I think honestly it was a smart pick by Green Bay, because this narrative out there from social media fans of, oh, they needed a wide receiver or a running back. They were 13-3 last year. They needed one more piece for Rodgers. That's not how the NFL works. Like, we always assume, like, oh, get one more guy and that puts them over the top. It's always a new dynamic every single year. Schedules change. The roster continues to change. Packers were very smart to invest this early to give them the luxury that, hey, there's no pressure on Jordan Love. And maybe they can throw out this narrative like, hey, he could be a Taysom Hill. He could be a decoy. He could be a running quarterback. We don't, like, we'll see. But, like, honestly, I think they're going to make sure He's healthy. He's standing upright. He's in a good spot to just learn and not have any pressure on him. Then when he's ready to, if Rodgers gets hurt or if he's pushing in practice after year's end and, he can maybe be the guy. So, I mean, I think the Packers were really smart that they ended up getting Jordan Love. I think it's going to be a good pick. I think he's going to be a really good player in Green Bay when it's all said and done.
And, just to kind of go back off of the whole Taysom Hill thing, by the way, I don't want to be put on the record here that I'm, tooting Taysom Hill's horn here, but in order to use a guy like Taysom Hill the way that New Orleans is, you got to be a rare type of breed.
That's right.
And
where's Taysom Hill from, Trevor? Huh?
Idaho.
He's from BYU. No,
he's from Idaho.
Freak. Taysom Hill's a freak, man. I watched that guy in an NFL Pro Day at BYU. He was running like a 4.39 40. I'm just like, did you just have like a broken leg and a Liz Frank and all these different injuries? Like Taysom Hill's just like when people say the next Taysom Hill, it's like it's like not. It's like it's not like the next Lamar Jackson. Like, come on, those guys are freaks. They're just these rare unicorn type figures that just they're not real. Like you can't just expect that's gonna be found in a draft again. Like no, like but Jordan Love is gonna be a really good player for Green Bay and Taysom. I think he's got a great opportunity in New Orleans in the future too, and it's gonna be fun. Like I think local fans, we're gonna see a lot of maybe intriguing local athletes emerge as quarterbacks for these franchises. I'm really hoping for it because it's great for us and it's great for local sports fans as well.
Well, Mitch, I'm going back to you being really, really mad when you were trying to figure out which place was showing the BYU games on the mountain. I'm channeling that anger into if this happened in the NBA where they reseeded the playoffs, where you did just the top 16 teams and seeded them that way. I'm going to be mad because guess who the Jazz would end up playing? They would be playing the Houston Rockets again.
Wow. That would be
because as of right now, playoffs started today. They would play the Oklahoma City Thunder. Jazz would have the 4 seed. Right. Oklahoma City would have the 5th seed. But if you reseed the playoffs, it's the Jazz and Rockets. And, Ben Anderson working on a holiday today. He wrote this up today. And there was a conversation. I know that Commissioner Adam Silver has been, for this change. It's just, obviously a lot of it has to go through the NBA Players Association. But, I don't want to play Houston again. I'm tired of it. Give me a different playoff opponent. Give me Denver. Give me Dallas or the Clippers. I'll take the Clippers. I'll take the Lakers. I don't want to play Houston again. I'm sick of it just because I'm one of those guys, Mitch. I'm kind of putting out the fandom here right now. I hate watching James Harden play.
Oh, what?
I can't watch him play because of his antics out on the floor and just trying to get to the foul line at all costs. And maybe I'm in the minority here. I can't watch the guy play basketball.
I think Jazz Nation agrees with you. I think Jazz fans can't stand him. I mean, and then now you throw in the Russell Westbrook element. Like,
that's the worst.
Was bad enough, but we know there's no love lost with Jazz fans and Russell Westbrook. Brody gets under the skin of Jazz fans. So, yeah, I mean, granted, it wouldn't be at the Viv or anything like that. But, I mean, yeah, that would be discouraging, especially when you consider, too, you think back to the offseason and, we're talking about the Jazz as maybe the best team in the West, potentially. And then I know this pandemic's thrown a wrench in everything, but when it's all said and done and the playoffs tip off, you're playing Houston again. Like, come on. Like, after all that offseason, Conley, Boyan, it'll be interesting to see how the Jazz could navigate that potential gauntlet because, like Ben Anderson put, it would be a gauntlet. You play the Jazz, or excuse me, you play the Rockets in the 7-10, maybe the Lakers or Brooklyn. Would probably be the Lakers because
it would not be Brooklyn.
KD's come out and said he's not going to play.
And Kyrie's out too.
Right. So then if you somehow got past the Lakers, you're looking at what? Denver, Indiana, Toronto, the defending champs, Memphis. I mean, personally, I love this 1-16 layout of just merging it all and just playing the best 16 teams. I think that's the best way.
But then the Jazz have got a tank.
And I think that honestly that this would be a great, playoff bracket. I would love to see it. I can't wait and hope that it actually happens this way, because that would be a lot of fun.
Well, not only that, but then say that the Jazz were somehow, without Bojan Bogdanovic, able to get to the NBA Finals, you'd play probably Milwaukee or the Clippers.
Yeah, I mean,
and the Bucks are legit.
That's what would happen too if you got the 16 best teams. Is that you would see no one would have to coast, because I think we always see the last few weeks with the Last Dance documentary, the GOAT conversations taking place in the NBA, and a lot of people bring up LeBron, the younger generation. They say he's got a conversation to be in the GOAT status, but thing is with him and with his 8 straight finals, and look, don't get me wrong, I stand for LeBron, but his path in the Eastern Conference was always terrible. I mean, he really went through no great teams. I mean, you look at some of those battles that the Bulls had, the Jazz in the 90s did to get to the finals, the Lakers. I mean, they had to go through 350-win teams in some playoff years. The LeBron never had to do that, whereas you get the best 16 teams regardless of conference. I think you're going to make everyone's road, whether you're the Bucks, whether you're the Brooklyn Nets, the Lakers, the Jazz, whoever it may be, you're going to have to earn it even more so than in years past. The NBA playoffs has always been the toughest, maybe playoff to win in pro sports, but I think this even makes it tougher if you made all just the best 16 teams in the league getting into the playoffs.
And, there's only one thing that really could cripple this whole thing from actually happening, and that is, as Ben, outlined here, traveling clear across the country in a series. And, you look at this, Bucks going to Orlando, that isn't too bad. Miami to, the Thunder, it's not too bad. Same with, the Clippers in Dallas, Boston, Philly, Denver, Indiana, maybe. Toronto, Memphis isn't bad. Utah, Houston. This is the one that would be really bad. The Lakers in Brooklyn. Because, you end up having 2 games there in Brooklyn, but say that the Lakers don't sweep in that series, you got to go back to LA. And then if you have a game 6, you got to go back to Brooklyn. And if you have a game 7, you got to go back to LA. And that's traveling across the country. And I know a lot of people are like, well, these guys have chartered planes and all that stuff. It's still flying across the country in a plane. It whether they have all the luxuries and everything like that, that's the only thing that would really hamper it. But there's really, other than Denver and going to Indiana and LA and Brooklyn, this really doesn't seem all that bad as far as travel.
No, it really doesn't. It would be a great playoff, and it would be something that everyone would be consuming at probably a record-setting level for the NBA. I mean, NBA ratings have kind of dipped the last few years, especially since LeBron went to LA. The NBA hasn't had that prime time window with a marquee athlete. This would be just a ratings boom, because, we were talking a few weeks ago at a work picnic. We were adhering to our social distancing, but we're having a lunch, and it's I will never take for granted Charlotte Hornets versus the Cleveland Cavaliers at 5 p.m. ever again.
Never
again. Give that to me as much as humanly possible, please. I will never take those 5 p.m. Eastern Conference games for granted. I just want some NBA back in my life, please.
Give me the Charlotte Hornets and the Cleveland Cavaliers every day, and I will be happy with it from now on.
And I just want some closure. I want some closure to this season. I don't care if the guys like Shaq coming out and saying, whoever wins this, it's going to be a tainted title. No. If there's a 16-team playoff, whoever ends up winning it, that's the champ. And you want to go out and win that dang thing, even if it's a tainted season or not. This would be big time. And
okay, hold on, Mitch.
Anyone could win it.
Hold on. I'm calling you out here because I have a feeling that the reason why you want this season finished is because the Lakers are title contenders. If this was the Lakers last year, you wouldn't care. Am I right?
No. I did say last year, or I did say a couple weeks ago to some of my friends and stuff, I was like, man, why can't this happen last year when the Lakers were just brutal? No, but no, honestly, I just want the NBA, because I think that there could be a fascinating, I feel in all sports, the conversations we're having about college football, about the NBA, I think all these leagues have a unique opportunity to kind of get creative with their playoffs, their schedules, their whole entire seasons, and kind of just look at it as a year of experiments. Because I've always thought that the NBA should go to just the best 16 teams. And I don't think anyone's going to argue with that if you do it this year, because it's a unique time. Like this is just kind of a strange thing that we're all going through. Try it out. Let's see how this thing works. And I think we would all love the results, because I just think that the league, it doesn't need to just be based on conference anymore. I think it's got to be the 16 best teams, because there's been far too many years in the Western Conference where there's been a really good team that's got 48 wins, and they get left out of the playoffs because, well, there's only 8 spots in the West. And then you look at the Eastern Conference, the last 6, 7, and 8 seeds, got like 37 wins each. It's like, what? Well, that's not fair. Like, that's just not right. So play the best 16 teams. I think this is just a great opportunity for all sports to kind of get creative, and no one's going to frown on it. The traditionalists aren't going to be mad because this is not traditional. So it's like, let's just kind of navigate this all together, try something new. I think it's going to work out in the end. It could be something that we all use long term.
All right, Mitch, final thing, and then obviously we've already gone over a little bit, but I can't end this without asking you this. So they had this they had the match, is what they're calling it, where Tom Brady and Phil Mickelson went up against Peyton Manning and Tiger Woods. It was all for the virus relief. They raised $20 million for COVID-19 relief, and barely one was Tiger Woods and Peyton Manning. Now, I mean, it was okay. I watched some of it. It was really good trash talk. Peyton Manning is absolutely hilarious and needs to be an NFL commentator immediately. But he was fantastic. Tom Brady sucked until he hit that eagle. And Phil wasn't that great either. And Tiger just did his thing. But, Peyton had to be carried a little bit. But it was just fun to see, trash talking, because, Peyton was saying, do we need to have Nick Foles or Eli Manning come and caddy for Tom Brady? Because, those are the two guys that Tom Brady lost to in the big games. And so,
how refreshing was it to see Tom Brady kind of struggle at something?
It was awesome.
He just seems like a guy
awesome.
Who struggle at anything.
And also splitting his pants was amazing.
Tom Brady, I have the utmost respect for that guy, even though his little tuck rule kind of just altered the entire world. But I digress. But it's just kind of just interesting to see that guy struggle. Even J.J. Watt mentioned, that it was kind of fun to see Tom struggle a little bit, just because the guy is just he seems like that guy that's just good at everything. He's great. He's the best quarterback to ever live. He's got the beautiful wife. He's got the perfect children. He just looks like that guy that's just good at everything. And then it's like, to see him struggle, it's like, yes, he's normal. He hacks just like all of us on the goal.
And it was funny because Charles Barkley was on that broadcast of this. And they had every single player mic'd up, and you could hear what the commentators were saying, so they could interact with you throughout the match. And Charles Barkley's like, hey, it was like a hole. It was like the 3rd or 4th hole. He's like, hey, Tom, if you can hit the ball onto the green on here, I'll donate $25,000. And Tom Brady shanked it onto the cart, onto the cart path. It was awful. And, and so they were talking crap to Tom about how bad he was until he hit that eagle. And then basically he's like, hey, Chuck, shut up. As soon as he hit the eagle, and was just, hashing it back at him. And so I thought that was the most entertaining part. I didn't care about the golf part, but I will say, I will, kind of tie this locally. Mitch, if BYU came to you and said, hey, Mitch, you can pick anybody who attended BYU, 4 people, and you put them into a golf tournament for charity, it would be televised nationally or worldwide, even if you wanted to. What 4 BYU greats would you put in this golf tournament?
Wow, that's a heck of a question. I would say, first off, we got to have Jimmer Fredette. We got Jimmer Fredette because Jimmer's just Jimmer, right? He's got to be. He's got to
do it.
2, Danny Ainge, because he beat Michael Jordan in golf. We learned a few weeks ago. So Danny Ainge has got to be in the mix. Taysom Hill has got to be in the mix. Taysom's a really good golfer. He's got now a custom Saints Superdome putter donated to him by some
sick.
Taysom's got to be in the mix. And then finally, I'd go Jim McMahon, because he'd be kind of like the John Daly of the group. He'd be a pants guy. He'd be coming in with the colorful swag. And Jim McMahon's a pretty good golfer in his own right. And so I would say Jimmer, Ainge, Taysom, McMahon, the conversations that would be had in that foursome, that'd be something else. Because you're just seeing all kind of walks of life represented in that foursome, and it's kind of like a holy grail of BYU greats. That'd be my foursome.
There's a comment in here saying that Robbie Bosco is a golf coach.
That's right, he is. That's actually a great poll. I forgot about that. Robbie Bosco is, but he's the national champion, so maybe I'm kind of rethinking this. But I mean, we got to go with the hot thing right now, right? Kind of got recency bias and go Taysom, and Taysom's a good golfer. I'd put
Taysom. You got to do it.
Robbie Bosco,
Taysom, Jimmer, and Ainge. You have to do it because they are the hottest names right now among BYU alums. I mean, you got to do it. Yeah. And then the last one, Jim. I think just with what he's done, I think would be interesting as well,
and could be considered. I mean, you ask like a guy like Tom Holmoe, the AD at BYU, he would tell you Jim McMahon's probably the greatest player ever in BYU history. So, I mean, I think Jim McMahon and he plays some golf in his own time, and like I said, he might bring a 12-pack of beer too to enjoy and have fun. But that's my foursome, man. I'm sticking to it.
All right, Mitch, what do you have coming up on Cougar Tracks?
What about for you?
Oh, for me?
What about for the Utes? I want to hear your foursome.
Ooh, for the Utes, you got to have Alex Smith.
Okay.
Especially after Project 11. You can probably get out and, swing it a little bit. I know I don't think he's an avid golfer, but I think he, would be really good. Eric Weddle, just because he's that sneaky good trash talker.
Okay.
You would normally not think if you just had a conversation with him that he'd talk trash, but I think once he gets out on the field, and out on the course, he's a guy who would definitely talk trash. I'm trying to think here. Man, this is kind of interesting. I would say just Kyle Whittingham, just because he has so many stories, and he really enjoys golfing, and he'd have stories for days. And if you get him, mic'd up and, around some of his old players and, they're beating up on him a little bit and, see how he handles that, I think it'd be pretty entertaining. And then I would say I would want to go Keith Van Horn as that fourth one, just kind of as that dark horse guy who, played under Rick, played in the NBA. He has stories too, but, you always kind of thought of him as kind of the quiet guy.
Yeah.
And so, seeing how he would be out on the golf course, I think would be pretty entertaining. So I'm going to go with Weddle, Whittingham, Van Horn, and Alex Smith.
His Majera stories are always gold on Twitter.
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely.
They're always really good.
Speaking of following on Twitter, you guys can follow me at Trevor A Sports. You can follow Mitch at Mitch_Harper. Mitch, what do you have coming up for Cougar Tracks this week?
Yeah, so a lot to get to this week. We're going to have a lot of football conversation, kind of diving into some of the player expectations on Cougar Tracks. Like, what are my expectations for Zach Wilson? What about, Kyrus Tunga, Matt Bushman? We're going to start to get into that on Cougar Tracks. Also some interviews with some players as well throughout the week. Going to upload some of my interviews from Cougar Sports Saturday onto the feed as well. It's kind of bonus episodes. So getting kind of hot and heavy now. Now that Memorial Day's passed, it's kind of that checkpoint where it's time to kind of lock and load on the football season. And now that we're seeing June 1st, facilities starting to open up, to me, I'm kind of mentally already saying, like, it's go time. My wife's going, I thought it was summer. Like, we're starting to get ready. Like, no, it's football season. And I'm getting because I'm ready to get locked and loaded. So that's kind of what I got on tap coming up on Cougar Tracks. And obviously written articles as well coming up on KSLSports.com. And then also the recruitment of Mac McClung will be something I'll be following as well. Could get some more insight, maybe his top three or maybe a decision. We'll find out later this week. And then I will have Jake Bentley on the Crimson Corner podcast. He's a guy who will be competing for the starting quarterback job at the University of Utah. Mitch, it's always good to catch up with you, man. Have a good rest of your holiday, and we'll definitely talk soon. Sounds good, Trevor. All right, and that is the KSLSports.com front page presented by University of Federal Credit Union. Make sure you head over to KSLSports.com.